thanks. All right, cool. So William McCusker here. I'm the Director of Partnerships for Habidatium. The company was established in 2014, headquartered here in New York City. And we're here today with our location risk score. And that is a financial benchmark for real estate investments and lending. The construction of the score is based on activity, mobile phone activity. I'll go into all this in more detail in a bit. Business density and diversity, and then also the quality of a location's surrounding area. It is a score, so it's a normalized relative score, and you'll see as we get through the examples, we use 1 as the top score and 10 as the weakest. There are 2 main categories of how this location risk score works. There's a local location risk score, which is, you can think of that as a neighborhood score. And there's an accessible score, which is based on areas nearby through catchment area isochrones at different intervals of time, like a 10-minute walk, for example, or 20 minutes by public transit. And it's not just the distance that an area can reach. So it's not all about the transit system per se, but how good of the locations that an area can reach are. And then together we have an overall score, which is the average of those 2 scores. And so the way this is delivered is as a data feed meant to be integrated into a client's existing system. And the real estate metric that we're associating it with is cap rate. We see a pretty strong correlation between low risk, so in the 1s and 2s categories, and a low cap rate, and vice versa. A higher location risk score should be an indicator of a higher cap rate. And this is asset class agnostic. I guess in the case of this PropTech Challenge, we're talking about residential, but in the case of retail and office or hotel, et cetera, the way the methodology is designed is to accommodate different asset classes. So here, this is a table of properties I pulled from active deals on just on LoopNet. But the idea here is that it's massive evaluation. So you could pull in a portfolio of 10,000 properties and get their associated location risk score and the subset within our system. It's not a static tool. We can look back historically and we can track the change to this score over time. So the analysis that our clients tend to do is around deltas. So, in the case of COVID-19, one might evaluate the change from Q2 2020 versus Q2 2019, and the most likely catalyst to that change would be the drop in activity in these areas as a result of disclosure and other things. But this would be a quantifiable way to measure that drop. And then even without pandemic, the trend line that one can see with our location risk score should be a correlation that can be used as part of your cap rate exit estimates and the like. And I speak to cap rate, but this could be connected to in any indicator you're using in the real estate world. This is just the one that we sort of think it's the most relevant towards. Unlike a lot of kind of location intelligence tools that you correlate us with or compare us to, our main goal is to be seen as operational rather than descriptive. So we're not coming and telling you this location has X crime rate and is good in terms of green space and building age and 500 other variables. All of that is all quite useful. Ours is meant to be a single number, just for practical application as a signal, as a multiplier onto your KPIs that you have existing in-house. And it's adaptable for that reason to kind of meet the different regional needs that clients might have. So examples that I'm going to look at, it's all based on your relative score against the rest of the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania MSA. But scores could easily be based on a comparison to the whole of the United States or just the 5 boroughs. Likewise, these accessible scores in terms of the locations that every location has access to can be broken down by access by car, foot, or public transit. And again, in the cities where perhaps there's not much of a public transit infrastructure or walkability is not a thing, it's just a driving city, those can be turned on or off. And the same thing goes for the time intervals. 10, 20, 30 minutes could easily be 5, 10, 15 or longer, just depending on the regional context. So we bring in a default that we think is widespread and applicable, but allow adjustments based on client needs. And just to show in action in places in New York that people are probably fairly familiar with, just looking at Mott Street and Chinatown, this area is a 2 out of 10, so quite a good score, not the best of the best. And in terms of its access, it's as good as you can get. So it's super connected to the most dense and vibrant business and people area in the city, and it's near best score. So 1 is the best, 0.1, it's an average of those sub scores you see in the few slides back, and you're seeing here a relatively low cap rate, whereas a higher risk score down in Brighton Beach is composed of a 3 local score and decent walkability to other locations nearby, as it's kind of has its own center in that part of the city with Coney Island and the like. But in terms of accessibility and public transit, of course, it's a bit worse, and correspondingly a higher cap rate. And so these are real examples that I pulled using this tool. Beyond just the score as a connector to cap rate and a way to adjust cap rate, it also can be used as a means to think through reprofiling decisions. And again, in the time of the pandemic, shopping centers are being looked at, and with the lack of traffic, there's been a trend that we're seeing for a redevelopment as a distribution hub or micro logistics. And when an owner of these type of developments or someone who's looking to reprofile, trying to decide between several or what the best candidate might be, a profile like this is an example where you have great auto accessibility, good for the distribution, and poor walkability and public transit. These factors here would be, a good indicator that it's probably not going to do well in a time where everybody's attracted to their local nearby shopping centers as opposed to driving to the enclosed malls. The interface we have developed for this, although not the not the main kind of point of the data feed, we have a geospatial tool for visualizing the data feed in action, and to create that earlier table I was showing, just a drag and drop tool for that. But here you can see the transit map score at 10 minutes in New York. And I guess I need to speak up here. 3 minutes left. And basically all of Brooklyn and Manhattan score quite well. And so the opportunity here is to look at the peripheral areas. So you start to see like Ridgewood, Queens, and other kind of up and coming areas that have a good score. And this might be a good area for investment. In terms of the auto score, I might skip that just for sake of time. And then overall score, the entirety of Manhattan is blue because its overall score is in the kind of 1 to 2 range. But just from a visual vantage point, if I make my max in the gradient scale 1.5, I can then highlight these are the blue areas here are the best of the best in the entire city. So even though there's a sea of blue in Manhattan, if you zone in and kind of specify something you would easily see on a spreadsheet, but to show it visually, you can here show the best areas in Manhattan. Again, this is from aggregated and anonymous data, so it can be updated quite regularly. We look at the world as a series of grid cells. Here on the right, this is a 250-meter breakdown of Miami, I believe. In terms of the business categories, we look at both the density, so the number of businesses, and also the diversity, so the number of categories of businesses. We can also use transactional data and categories of transactions as a proxy for this. Finally, we merge all of the kind of central locations together into clusters to create these data-driven neighborhoods called centralities. For the accessible scores, again, it's based on the isochrones at 10 and 20 and 30-minute intervals, depending on your preference. And then again, finally, back in New York, here's the local map. These are all the ratings. The blue is the best, the red is the worst of areas of Manhattan. Here again, like I was mentioning before, 5 years ago or even 3 years ago, you might not have seen the Ridgewood Queens area scoring quite well, but it's kind of gentrifying. In Atlanta, you can point to 2 hubs of Midtown and Buckhead as your best areas. So if you're an investor unfamiliar with these markets, you can quickly see what the lowest risk areas might be.
William, we're going to need to start wrapping up because we're just about at 3:30.
Yep. I'll 1 minute.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. So the inspiration for this is, according to Moody's Analytics and according to location, this is the biggest predictor in CRE value. Yet it lacks standardization. So everything I just was talking about is about standardizing location. And why do we do it? Because this can be part of the cap rate calculation, or at least as a means to justify or make an argument against a certain cap rate or for a certain cap rate. So we're part of that risk premium equation. Why now? Risk-free investing is quite vulnerable, and we can see vulnerability this year especially. So this risk premium that we've developed around location risk can help with that for your investments. And just to reiterate, this is a data feed. It's not just the US, not just New York. We can cover this globally, quite data agnostic in that regard, with many partnerships across the world. It's dynamic. We have updates. We could do monthly, quarterly, yearly. Just depends on the need. And it's operational, so it can connect to your model. So that's the story, and thank you.